Have you ever wondered how a single person could change the course of music forever? Today, we're diving into the extraordinary life of Ludwig van Beethoven, a genius who defied the odds to create masterpieces that resonate through time. Born into a world of music, Beethoven faced numerous challenges, including a tragic twist that could have ended his career. Yet, his determination and talent pushed him to create some of the most powerful and enduring music ever composed. What drove this man to achieve such greatness? What were the key moments that defined his path? From his struggles with hearing loss to his triumphs on the world stage, Beethoven's story is one of passion, resilience, and unparalleled creativity. As we explore his life, you'll witness the highs and lows that shaped his incredible journey and discover how his music continues to inspire and move people today. Stay tuned as we reveal the remarkable journey of a man who forever changed the sound of the world. Ludwig van Beethoven, December 17, 1770 to March 26, 1827, was a renowned German composer and pianist, celebrated throughout Western music history. His works, which spanned both the classical and romantic periods, are among the most frequently performed pieces in the classical music canon. Beethoven's career can be categorized into three distinct phases: his initial phase from 1770 to 1802, during which he honed his skills; his middle phase, or heroic, from 1802 to approximately 1812, marked by a unique style influenced by Joseph Haydn and Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart, and characterized by his increasing deafness; and his later phase from 1812 to 1827, during which he pushed the boundaries of musical innovation and expression. Born in Bonn, Beethoven displayed musical talent from a young age. His father, Johann van Beethoven, was his primary teacher, followed by Christian Gottlieb Niffy. Under Niffy's mentorship, he published his debut work, a collection of keyboard variations, in 1783. Beethoven found comfort in the company of Helene von Brenning's family, where he befriended and taught piano to her children. At the age of 21, he relocated to Vienna, where he studied composition with Haydn and established himself as a virtuoso pianist. Prince Karl Alois Lichnowsky became his patron, leading to the publication of his Opus 1 piano trios in 1795. Beethoven's First Symphony was premiered in 1800, followed by his first set of string quartets in 1801. Despite his advancing deafness, he continued to conduct, including the premieres of his Third and Fifth Symphonies in 1804 and 1808, respectively. His violin concerto was released in 1806, and his final piano concerto, No. 5, Op. 73, Emperor, dedicated to Archduke Rudolph of Austria, premiered in 1811 without Beethoven as the soloist. By 1815, he was nearly completely deaf but continued to compose, documenting his personal struggles through letters such as the Heiligenstadt Testament, 1802, and an unsent letter to an unknown, immortal beloved, 1812. After 1810, as his deafness progressed, Beethoven became increasingly secluded yet produced some of his most celebrated works, including his later symphonies, mature chamber music, and late piano sonatas. His only opera, Fidelio, premiered in 1805 and underwent revisions to its final version in 1814. He composed the Missa Solemnis between 1819 and 1823 in his final Symphony No. 9, which featured choral elements, between 1822 and 1824. His late string quartets, including the Grosse Fugue, 1825 to 1826, stand as his final masterpieces. After suffering from illness for several months, Beethoven passed away in March 1827 at the age of 56. Life and career. Early life and education. Ludwig van Beethoven, the grandson of the renowned composer Ludwig van Beethoven, hailed from Mechelen, a city in the Austrian Duchy of Brabant, currently located in the Flemish region of Belgium. At the tender age of 21, Ludwig relocated to Bonn, where he secured a position as a bass singer at the court of Clemens August, the Archbishop-Elector of Cologne. His career flourished, and by 1761, he had risen to the position of Kapellmeister, music director, establishing himself as a leading figure in Bonn's musical scene. A portrait he commissioned towards the end of his life now resides in his grandson's possession, serving as a cherished emblem of their musical lineage. Ludwig was blessed with 2 sons, with the elder, Johann, taking on the role of a tenor at the same court and offering keyboard and violin lessons to augment his earnings. Johann married Maria Magdalena Kevrich in 1767, the daughter of Heinrich Kevrich, who held the esteemed position of head chef at the court of Archbishop Johann IX Philipp von Walderdorf of Trier. Beethoven was conceived from this union in Bonn, now a part of the Beethoven House Museum, located at Bonngasse 20. Although there is no official record of his birth date, a baptismal record from the Catholic parish of St. Remigius on December 17, 1770 is extant. The customary practice in the region was to baptize within 24 hours of birth, leading to a general consensus that Beethoven was born on December 16, though there is no documentary evidence to support this. Out of Johann and Maria's 7 children, only Ludwig, the second in line, and 2 younger brothers, Caspar Anton Karl, born on April 8, 1774, and Nikolaus Johann, born on October 2, 1776, survived their infancy. Beethoven's musical journey began at the age of 5, marked by a rigorous and intense education that often left him in tears. His father was his initial music teacher, followed by other local mentors such as court organist Gillis van den Eden, family friend Tobias Friedrich Pfeiffer, who offered keyboard lessons, relative Franz Roventini, who taught him the violin and viola, and court concertmaster Franz Anton Reis, who guided him in violin playing. His musical education was comprehensive and demanding, with sessions that sometimes lasted late into the night, with young Beethoven being woken from his slumber to practice. Beethoven's musical prowess was apparent from a young age. Motivated by the success of Leopold Mozart with his children Wolfgang and Nannerl, Johann championed his son as a prodigious talent, claiming Beethoven was 6, when he was actually 7, when he made his debut in public in March 1778. 1780 to 1792, Bonn. Around 1780 or 1781, Beethoven started his musical education with Christian Gottlob Niffy, who played a crucial role in his development as a composer in Bonn. Niffy imparted his knowledge of composition to Beethoven, and in March 1783, Beethoven's debut work, a collection of keyboard variations, was released. Shortly after, Beethoven took on the role of Niffy's assistant organist, initially without pay in 1782, and later as a salaried member of the court chapel in 1784. His initial piano sonatas, dedicated to Elector Maximilian Friedrich, were also made available to the public that same year. The Magazin der Musik highlighted Beethoven in 1783, portraying him as a young prodigy with remarkable talent, capable of playing the piano with both skill and force, and possessing the ability to read music by sight. The most notable piece he performed was Bach's Das Wohltemperierte Klavier, a piece Niffy introduced to him. Following the death of Elector Maximilian Friedrich, Maximilian Franz took over as the Elector of Bonn. Maximilian Franz continued to support Beethoven by appointing him as the court organist and providing financial backing for Beethoven's relocation to Vienna in 1792. During this period, Beethoven established significant connections, especially with the von Breuning family. He offered piano lessons to the von Breuning children, and Helene von Breuning, who had recently lost her husband, became a motherly figure to him, teaching him proper etiquette and fostering his love for literature and poetry. The von Breuning home served as a sanctuary for Beethoven from his difficult home environment, which was primarily controlled by his father's addiction to alcohol. Franz Wiegeler, a young medical student and a lifelong friend, married one of the von Breuning daughters. Count Ferdinand von Waldstein, another regular visitor to the von Breuning home, became a close friend and financial supporter, commissioning Beethoven's first stage work, the ballet Music for a Royal Ballet, in 1791. From 1785 to 1790, there are scarce records of Beethoven's musical creations, possibly due to the negative reception of his early works and ongoing family problems. During this period, Beethoven went to Augsburg, where composer Anna von Schaden and her husband provided him with financial assistance to return to Bonn to be with his ailing mother. His mother passed away in July 1787, just a few weeks after his return from Vienna, where he stayed for approximately 2 weeks and may have had the chance to meet Mozart. In 1789, Beethoven's father was compelled to step down from his position due to his alcoholism, and half of his pension was directed towards Ludwig for the support of the family. Beethoven made up for this by teaching, despite his dislike for it, and by playing the viola in the court orchestra. This role exposed him to a variety of operas, including those by Mozart, Gluck, and Paisiello. He also formed a friendship with Anton Reicha, a composer, flutist, and violinist of a similar age, who was a nephew of the conductor of the court orchestra, Joseph Reicha. From 1790 to 1792, Beethoven composed several pieces, although none were published at the time but demonstrated a growing sophistication and diversity. Musicologists have identified a theme reminiscent of those found in his Third Symphony in a set of variations written in 1791. It is believed that Beethoven received his first commissions during this period. The Literary Society in Bonn commissioned a cantata to commemorate the death of Joseph II, and another cantata to celebrate the ascension of Leopold II as Holy Roman Emperor, possibly commissioned by the Elector. These two emperor cantatas were not performed during Beethoven's lifetime, and were lost until the 1880s when Johannes Brahms recognized them as distinctly Beethoven's work, highlighting his unique style that distinguished him from the classical tradition. It is likely that Beethoven crossed paths with Joseph Haydn in late 1790 when Haydn was on his way to London and made a brief stop in Bonn around the Christmas season. In July 1792, they met again in Bonn upon Haydn's return from London to Vienna, during which Beethoven played in the orchestra at the Redoute in Godesberg. It is believed that arrangements were made at that time for Beethoven to study under Haydn. Before his departure, Waldstein wrote to Beethoven, encouraging him to pursue his long-held ambitions and to absorb Mozart's spirit from Haydn's teachings. 1792 to 1802, Vienna, the early years. In November 1792, Beethoven left Bonn for Vienna amid the spread of war rumors from France. Just after he left, he found out that his father had passed away. Upon arriving in Vienna, he concentrated on his studies and performances, embracing the belief that he was destined to follow in the footsteps of the recently deceased Mozart. He immersed himself in Mozart's music, studying it closely and creating pieces that showed a clear Mozartian influence. At first, Beethoven didn't set out to become a composer. Instead, he focused on his studies and performances. With Haydn's guidance, he honed his skills in counterpoint and also took violin lessons from Ignaz Schuppanzigh. During this time, he occasionally received lessons from Antonio Salieri, mainly in Italian vocal composition, a relationship that spanned from at least 1802 to possibly 1809. When Haydn moved to England in 1794, Beethoven was expected to return to Bonn by the Elector. However, he chose to stay in Vienna, continuing his studies with Johann Albrechtsberger and other teachers. By this point, it was evident that Bonn would be taken over by the French, leaving Beethoven without a stipend or the need to return. Several Viennese noblemen recognized his talent and offered him financial support, including Prince Joseph Franz Lobkowitz, Prince Karl Lichnowsky, and Baron Gottfried van Swieten. Thanks to his connections with Haydn and Waldstein, Beethoven started to gain a reputation as a skilled performer and improviser among the Viennese nobility. His friend Nikolaus Simrock began publishing his music, starting with a collection of keyboard variations on a theme by Dittersdorf. By 1793, Beethoven had established himself as a renowned piano virtuoso in Vienna but chose to withhold some of his works from publication to ensure they made a greater impact when they were eventually released. In 1795, Beethoven made his public debut in Vienna over 3 days, beginning with a performance of one of his piano concertos on March 29 at the Burgtheater and concluding with a Mozart concerto on March 31, likely the D minor concerto, for which he had composed a cadenza shortly after his arrival in Vienna. By this year, he had composed 2 piano concertos, one in B-flat major, which he had begun before moving to Vienna and had been working on for over a decade, and one in C major, which he considered his more significant work, labeling it as his first piano concerto and publishing it in March 1801, while the first one became Opus 19, published in December 1801. He also wrote new cadenzas for both concertos in 1809. In 1802, Beethoven's brother Caspar started to help him with his business affairs, successfully negotiating higher fees for Beethoven's latest works and selling his earlier unpublished compositions. Despite Beethoven's reluctance, Caspar pushed for making arrangements and transcriptions of well-known works for other instruments, a strategy Beethoven eventually agreed to prevent unauthorized versions by others. Following his debut in public, Beethoven secured the rights to publish his initial works, the three piano trios, Opus 1, as a tribute to Prince Lichnowsky. These pieces were a financial hit, generating enough income to cover his living costs for an entire year. In 1799, Beethoven engaged in and emerged victorious from a well-known piano duel against the virtuoso Joseph Wölfel at Baron Raymond Wetzler's residence, a place that had once been a home to Mozart. The following year, he defeated Daniel Steibelt at the Count Moritz von Fries salon. Beethoven's Eighth Piano Sonata, titled the Pathetique, published in 1799, outshone his earlier works in terms of intensity, emotional depth, originality, and creative use of musical themes and tonal structures. Between 1798 and 1800, Beethoven crafted his initial six-string quartets, which were commissioned by Prince Lobkowitz and dedicated to him, and were published in 1801. He also completed his septet in 1799, a piece that enjoyed widespread popularity throughout his lifetime. With the premieres of his First and Second Symphonies in 1800 and 1803, Beethoven was recognized as one of the most influential young composers after Haydn and Mozart. His unique melodies, innovative musical development, modulation techniques, and emotional depth distinguished him from his predecessors. The premiere of his First Symphony in 1800 included a comprehensive program that showcased works by Haydn and Mozart, his septet, and a piano concerto, which received a variety of reviews but highlighted Beethoven's growing reputation. In May 1799, Beethoven began instructing piano to the daughters of Hungarian Countess Anna Brunswick and developed a romantic interest in the younger daughter, Josephine. From 1801 to 1805, he mentored Ferdinand Ries, who later composed about their experiences together. Karl Czerny, who went on to become a celebrated pianist and educator, studied under Beethoven from 1801 to 1803, describing his teacher's distinctive appearance. By late 1801, Beethoven had begun work on a ballet, The Creatures of Prometheus, which received multiple performances and was quickly published in a piano version. He concluded his Second Symphony in 1802, originally intended for a cancelled concert, but it premiered in April 1803 at the Theater an der Wien, where Beethoven was appointed as the composer in residence. The concert featured his First and Second Symphonies, the Third Piano Concerto, and the Oratorio Christ on the Mount of Olives. Despite a mixed reception, the concert was financially successful. 1802 to 1812, the heroic period. Deafness. In 1815, Beethoven shared with the British pianist Charles Neate that his ability to hear began to diminish in 1798, following a fierce disagreement with a vocalist. This deterioration was made worse by intense tinnitus, which started as early as 1801, as he detailed in his correspondence with Wegeler and Carl Amenda. Despite these obstacles, Beethoven continued to thrive in his career and financially, though his closest companions probably were aware of his difficulties. Following medical recommendations, Beethoven moved to Heiligenstadt, a short distance from Vienna, from April to October 1802, aiming to deal with his condition. It was during this period that he wrote what is now recognized as the Heiligenstadt Testament, a sincere letter to his brothers about contemplating suicide due to his worsening deafness, yet reaffirming his commitment to his art as a means of life. Although this letter was never sent, it was later found among his papers after his passing. Despite his gradual loss of hearing, Beethoven continued to create music, though performing in concerts, a vital source of income, became increasingly difficult. His hearing loss also led to his seclusion from social activities. Czerny notes that Beethoven's hearing for speech and music remained relatively good until about 1812. In his later years, he could still perceive low-frequency sounds and abrupt loud noises, showcasing an incredible ability to persevere through significant personal challenges. Heroic style. Beethoven's return to Vienna from Heiligenstadt in 1802 signaled a significant turning point in his life and career, launching what is often described as his middle or heroic era. This era, which lasted from about 1802 to 1814, marked a major transformation in Beethoven's approach to composing, characterized by creative experimentation, deep emotional expression, and thematic grandeur. Upon his return, Beethoven was eager to explore new musical territories. He was not content with his previous works and shared his ambition with his student, Karl Czerny, stating, "I am not satisfied with the work I have done so far. From now on, I intend to take a new way." This determination marked the start of a period where Beethoven's compositions increasingly reflected his personal struggles, philosophical reflections, and hopes for humanity. A key highlight of Beethoven's heroic period was the Symphony No. 3 in E-flat major, also known as the Eroica Symphony. Originally conceived as a tribute to Napoleon Bonaparte, whom Beethoven admired for his support of revolutionary ideals, the symphony was initially titled Bonaparte. However, Beethoven famously removed Napoleon's name from the title page after learning of Napoleon's declaration as emperor in 1804. Renamed Eroica, Heroic, with a subtitle, to celebrate the memory of a great man, the symphony premiered in 1805 and broke new ground in both its length and thematic depth. Its exploration of heroism, struggle, and victory established it as a landmark piece in the history of Western classical music. In addition to the Eroica Symphony, Beethoven composed a series of monumental works that epitomized his new artistic direction. This period includes the 3 Razumovsky string quartets, which expanded the possibilities of the genre in terms of expression and structure, the Waldstein Piano Sonata and the Appassionata Piano Sonata, which highlighted Beethoven's virtuosity and emotional intensity, and symphonies from the 4th to the 8th, each pushing the limits of orchestral form and thematic development. Despite these artistic achievements, Beethoven encountered personal and professional obstacles during this time. His time at the Theater an der Wien ended in 1804, leading to a move to the outskirts of Vienna. His opera Leonore, which was later revised and renamed Fidelio, faced critical and financial difficulties. However, with the support of patrons like Prince Lobkowitz, Prince Lichnowsky, and Archduke Rudolf of Austria, who provided financial backing and commissioned new works, Beethoven was able to maintain his artistic independence. In 1808, Beethoven organized a grand concert in Vienna, featuring the premieres of his 5th Symphony, 6th Symphony, Pastoral, 4th Piano Concerto, and other works. This concert, despite facing organizational challenges and critical reception issues, highlighted Beethoven's growing international reputation as a composer of great vision and innovation. The upheavals in politics during the Napoleonic Wars, 1803 to 1815, deeply impacted Beethoven's music. In the midst of chaos, his compositions served as a means to convey deep-seated themes of bravery, perseverance, and the victory of the human spirit against challenges. Beethoven's creations from this era went beyond simple musical expression, connecting with people around the globe for their emotional intensity, intellectual depth, and significant philosophical messages. To sum up, Beethoven's middle or heroic phase marks a pivotal moment in the evolution of Western music. By creating revolutionary works that defied traditional norms and delved into deep human subjects, Beethoven cemented his place as one of the most esteemed composers in history. His music still resonates with and moves audiences, reflecting the lasting values of creative innovation and emotional impact. Goethe. By the end of 1809, Beethoven had been commissioned to create music for Johann Wolfgang von Goethe's play Egmont. This piece, which included an overture and 9 more entr'actes and vocal works, was finished and released as Op. 84 in 1810. It perfectly blended into Beethoven's style of heroic music. This project ignited Beethoven's interest in Goethe, leading him to adapt 3 of Goethe's poems into songs. His admiration for Goethe grew further through shared connections, such as Bettina Brentano, who kept in touch with both Beethoven and Goethe during this time. In a similar manner, Beethoven composed the reflective F minor string quartet, Op. 95, which he titled Quartetto Serioso, highlighting its serious and reflective nature. He also created the Op. 97 piano trio in B-flat major, also known as the Archduke Trio, as a tribute to his patron Archduke Rudolf. By the spring of 1811, Beethoven's health had taken a turn for the worse, experiencing severe headaches and high fever. His doctor, Johann Malfatti, recommended a treatment at the spa in Teplitz, now Teplice, Czech Republic. During his stay, Beethoven composed 2 more overtures and incidental music for dramas by August von Kotzebue, King Stephen, and the Ruins of Athens. In 1812, Beethoven was once again encouraged to visit Teplitz, where he met Goethe, an encounter that deeply affected both men. Goethe, in his reflections on Beethoven's talent, acknowledged his genius but also pointed out Beethoven's stubborn nature and dislike for societal norms. Despite their differences, Beethoven began work on a setting of Goethe's Mirrorstill und Glückliche Fahrt, Calm Sea and Prosperous Voyage, which he completed in 1815 as a choir and orchestra piece. This work, published in 1822 with a dedication to Goethe, highlighted Beethoven's lasting respect and admiration for the poet. In a letter to his publishers, Breitkopf and Hartel, Beethoven shared his concerns about Goethe's preference for courtly life, which contrasted sharply with his own views. However, his deep respect for Goethe as an immortal figure remained from his youth, showing the depth of Beethoven's emotional and intellectual connection with Goethe's literary works. The Immortal Beloved. While in Teplitz in 1812, Beethoven wrote a sincere, detailed love letter to his immortal beloved, whom he decided not to send. The identity of this enigmatic person has been the subject of much speculation over the years. Music historian Maynard Solomon suggested it might have been Anthony Brentano, while other possible candidates were Julie Guicciardi, Therese Malfatti, and Josephine Brunswick. Julie Guicciardi, who had caught Beethoven's interest briefly, got married in 1803, ending any romantic possibilities between them. Josephine Brunswick, who Beethoven deeply pursued through letters even after her marriage to Count Joseph Dame, moved away, leading Beethoven to recognize her lack of interest by 1807. Therese Malfatti, the niece of Beethoven's physician, turned down his proposal in 1810. She is well known for her role in the piano composition Für Elise. Antony Brentano, the wife of Franz Brentano and sister-in-law to Bettina Brentano, is believed to have had an affair with Beethoven from 1811 to 1812. After leaving Vienna in late 1812, she never saw Beethoven again, yet she expressed fondness for him in her later years. There is speculation that Beethoven might have been the father of Antony's son, Karl Joseph, despite never having met him. After 1812, there is no record of Beethoven being involved in romantic relationships. However, there is evidence of him occasionally having affairs with prostitutes during this time. 1813 to 1822, Acclaim. Family issues. In the early part of 1813, Beethoven was going through a difficult emotional period, which was reflected in a noticeable drop in his ability to create music. His once careful appearance began to fall apart, and the way he acted in public, especially at meals, became less polished. Family issues made his situation worse. Beethoven's attempts to convince his brother Johann to end his relationship with Therese Obermeier, who had a child out of wedlock, were not successful. Despite trying to get help from the community and religious leaders, Johann went ahead and married Therese on November 8, 1812. The worsening health and eventual death of Beethoven's brother Caspar from tuberculosis added to his troubles. In 1813, Beethoven gave Caspar 1,500 florins, which led to complicated legal actions to get the money back. After Caspar died on November 15, 1815, Beethoven got caught up in a long legal dispute with Caspar's widow, Johanna, over who should take care of their 9-year-old son, Karl. At first, Beethoven was supposed to be the only guardian, but he ran into problems when a later update to Caspar's will gave joint guardianship to Johanna and him. Despite getting Karl taken out of Johanna's care and put in a private school in January 1816, Beethoven faced more legal issues in 1818. During a court hearing, Beethoven couldn't prove his noble ancestry, so the case was moved to the Civil Court of Vienna, where he lost the right to be the sole guardian. He got back custody after a lot of legal fighting in 1820. Over the next years, Beethoven's close role in Karl's life was seen as too controlling by his nephew, leading to ongoing conflicts. Post-war Vienna. In June 1813, Beethoven was reinvigorated by the news of the French defeat at the Battle of Vittoria, led by the Duke of Wellington. Johann Nepomuk Maelzel, a renowned inventor, persuaded Beethoven to create a piece to honor the event from Maelzel's mechanical creation, the Panharmonicon. Beethoven also adapted the composition for an orchestra, known as Wellington's Victory, Op. 91, or the Battle Symphony. The piece was first performed on December 8, 1813, alongside his Seventh Symphony, at a charity event for war victims, which was a great success, leading to a second performance on December 12. The orchestra featured well-known musicians such as Giacomo Meyerbeer and Domenico Dragonetti, who were in Vienna at the time. Beethoven organized more concerts in January and February 1814, which proved to be the most financially successful of his career, allowing him to invest in valuable shares of a bank. This increase in popularity sparked a demand for the revival of Fidelio. Its third revised version debuted in Vienna in July and continued to be performed frequently in the following years. Beethoven's publisher, Art Aria, commissioned a piano version of the opera from the young Maschals, who inscribed it, "Finished, with God's help." Beethoven responded with, "Oh man, help thyself." During this period of productivity, Beethoven composed his sonata in E minor, Opus 90, marking his return to creating piano sonatas after a 5-year break. He also contributed patriotic music for the Congress of Vienna in November 1814, including the cantata Der glorreiche Augenblick, The Glorious Moment, and similar choral works, which increased his popularity but did not elevate his status as a serious composer, according to biographer Maynard Solomon. In April and May 1814, Beethoven made his last public appearances as a soloist, notably playing in his Archduke Trio. The decline in his hearing prompted him to use ear trumpets designed by Maelzel for speaking, a collection of which is now kept at the Beethoven House in Bonn. Despite his diminishing energy, Beethoven produced significant works in 1815, including a moving second version of the poem in Die Hoffnung, known for its operatic intensity. Other works from this year included the 2 cello sonatas Op. 102 numbers 1 and 2, a few minor pieces, and an initially attempted but ultimately abandoned 6th piano concerto. Pause. From 1815 to 1819, Beethoven's creative output took a significant dip, marking a distinct phase in his later years. He attributed a portion of this decline to a long-lasting illness he referred to as an inflammatory fever, which afflicted him for over a year starting in October 1816. According to biographer Maynard Solomon, this period of diminished productivity was also shaped by ongoing legal disputes concerning his nephew Karl, and Beethoven's growing estrangement from the prevailing musical styles of his time. He opposed the rising German Romanticism that favored themes of the supernatural in operas by composers such as Spar, Heinrich Marschner, and Carl Maria von Weber. Instead, he shifted his attention to studying Bach, Handel, and Palestrina, and remained dedicated to the grand, cyclical forms characteristic of the classical period, rather than the smaller, more lyrical compositions of Romanticism. In 1817, Beethoven reconnected with a former acquaintance when Johann Nepomuk Maelzel sought and received Beethoven's approval for his newly invented metronome, underscoring Beethoven's continued influence in the realm of musical innovation. Despite this period of relative calm, Beethoven produced notable works, including the monumental Hammerklavier Sonata, Sonata No. 29 in B-flat major, Op. 106, in 1818 and his song cycle settings of poems by Alois Geidel's, and Die Ferngeliet, Op. 98, in 1816, which brought the song cycle into the classical canon. Additionally, in 1818, he began developing sketches for what would eventually become part of his Ninth Symphony, a composition that would revolutionize symphonic music. By early 1818, Beethoven's health had shown signs of improvement, and his nephew Karl, who was now 11 years old, moved in with him in January, though Karl's mother would regain custody of him within a year through legal means. Beethoven's deteriorating hearing necessitated the use of conversation notebooks for communication, offering a detailed account of his musical thoughts, business dealings, personal reflections, and insights into his musical intentions and preferences. His household affairs also saw an improvement with the help of Nanette Streicher, the owner of the Stein Piano Workshop and a trusted friend who supported Beethoven during his illness and managed his household. Streicher also proved to be an excellent cook, enhancing Beethoven's living conditions. In 1818, Beethoven received a Broadwood piano as a gift from Thomas Broadwood, a recognition of his esteem in England. Despite this accolade, his health issues prevented him from fulfilling a proposed visit to London that year, as suggested by the Philharmonic Society. 1823 to 1827, final years. In 1823, Beethoven finalized three major compositions that had occupied his attention for years: the Missa Solemnis, the Ninth Symphony, and the Diabelli Variations. Beethoven handed over the Missa manuscript to Archduke Rudolf on March 19, over a year after Rudolf became the archbishop. At first, Beethoven was reluctant to share or perform these works widely, planning to sell copies of the Missa to courts throughout Germany and Europe. Louis XVIII of France was one of the select few to acquire it, also presenting Beethoven with a substantial gold medallion as a gift. Meanwhile, Diabelli aimed to publish both the symphony and the variations, drawing interest from other publishers such as Schlesinger and Carl Friedrich Peters, who eventually secured a deal with Schatz. Beethoven grew increasingly disenchanted with the reception of his works in Vienna, expressing his frustration to Johann Friedrich Rochlitz in 1822. "You will not hear from me here, Fidelio." They refuse to perform it, nor do they wish to listen. The symphonies? They lack interest in them. My concertos? They only play the ones I've composed. The solo works? They've become outdated, and here, trends dictate everything. At best, Schuppanzai might occasionally perform a quartet. Initially contemplating a premiere of the Missa and Ninth Symphony in Berlin, Beethoven eventually consented to local performances in Vienna, where they were first presented together on May 7, 1824, to great acclaim. Despite Beethoven's deafness, critics praised the symphony as a masterpiece, with Karl Czerny describing it as embodying a youthful energy and innovation. However, the financial returns were meager due to the high costs of production. A follow-up concert on May 24, which promised a minimum fee, was poorly attended, marking Beethoven's last public appearance. Following disagreements with his secretary Schindler over financial matters, Beethoven replaced him with Karl Holz, a member of the Schuppanzai Quartet. Despite his failing health, Beethoven shifted his attention to composing string quartets commissioned by Prince Nikolai Galitzin. The quartet in E major, Op. 127, premiered in March 1825, and Beethoven continued to work on it despite his illness, completing the quartet in a minor, Op. 132, during a period of recuperation in Baden. His quartet series concluded with the challenging 13th Quartet, Op. 130, which led to a demand for a new finale, which was later published separately as the Grosse Fugue, Op. 133. Beethoven considered the quartet in C minor, Op. 131, his most perfect work. In the midst of these creative pursuits, Beethoven's strained relationship with his nephew Karl continued, characterized by demanding letters and Karl's attempt at suicide in August. The situation escalated when Beethoven had a falling out with his brother Johann over Karl's inheritance, which was further complicated by Beethoven's declining health and worsening depression. Death. Upon his return to Vienna from Nixendorf in December 1826, Beethoven suffered a severe illness. Dr. Andreas Waruch was by his side, observing symptoms such as high fever, yellowing of the skin, jaundice, and fluid retention, dropsy, along with swollen body parts, persistent coughing, and difficulty in breathing. Multiple procedures were carried out to drain the excess fluid from Beethoven's abdomen. Beethoven remained by his uncle's side throughout December but had to leave in early January to enlist in the army at Igla, never to see him again. Shortly after his departure, Beethoven's nephew wrote to him, expressing satisfaction but also a sense of loss due to their separation. Following Beethoven's departure, he named his nephew as his only beneficiary in his will. Dr. Malfatti took over Beethoven's care, concentrating on treating his alcohol addiction, acknowledging the seriousness of his condition. News of Beethoven's sickness led to visits from familiar faces like Diabelli, Schuppanzai, Lichnowsky, Schindler, Johann Nepomuk Hummel, and his student Ferdinand Hiller. Tributes and presents were sent, including £100 from the Philharmonic Society in London and a case of wine from Schatz. Despite efforts to wake him, Beethoven spent most of his time in bed. On March 24th, he told those gathered, "Plaudite, amici, commedia finita est, applaud, friends, the comedy is over." The following day, upon receiving the wine, he murmured, "Pity, too late." Beethoven died on March 26, 1827, at the age of 56, with only his friend Anselm Huttenbrenner and possibly Johanna van Beethoven present. Huttenbrenner reported hearing a lightning strike and a thunderclap around 5 p.m., describing Beethoven's last moments. Beethoven opened his eyes, raised his right hand, and looked up for a few seconds with his fist clenched. Not another breath, not a heartbeat more. Visitors took locks of his hair as mementos. An autopsy showed significant damage to his liver, likely due to heavy drinking, and a large enlargement of the nerves related to hearing.
Beethoven's funeral in Vienna on March 29, 1827, was attended by an estimated 10,000 people. Franz Schubert and violinist Joseph Maysder were among those who carried the torch. The poet Franz Grillparzer, who would also write Schubert's epitaph, delivered a funeral oration. Beethoven was laid to rest in the Waring Cemetery, northwest of Vienna, following a requiem mass at the Church of the Holy Trinity, Dreifulltigkeitskirche, in Alserstrasse. His remains were exhumed in 1863 and relocated in 1888 to Vienna's Central Friedhof, where he was interred next to Schubert. Music. The three periods. Historian William Drabkin highlights that the idea of categorizing Beethoven's music into distinct eras dates back to at least 1818, when a writer suggested splitting his oeuvre into three phases. This theory, though often applied with varying timelines or compositions to illustrate shifts, has become a common approach among scholars studying Beethoven, starting with figures like Schindler, F.J. Fetis, and Wilhelm von Lenz. Subsequent scholars have tried to pinpoint smaller divisions within this framework. However, a major limitation is the exclusion of a fourth phase, Beethoven's initial period in Bonn, which is less often discussed. Additionally, it fails to capture the diverse evolution of Beethoven's musical styles across different genres. For example, his piano sonatas show a consistent growth throughout his career, whereas his symphonies do not progress in a straightforward manner. Among his works, the quartets are the most easily placed within this three-phase classification. The quartets from Op. 18 in 1801 to 1802, Op. 59, 74, and 95 in 1806 to 1814, and the later quartets from 1824. Drabkin suggests that the idea of distinct stylistic periods is likely to continue as long as there are program notes, scholarly essays that accompany recordings, and performances dedicated solely to Beethoven. Bonn 1782 to 1792. A collection of about 40 pieces, with 10 of the earliest ones dating back to 1785, have been preserved from his time in Bonn. It's been proposed that Beethoven stopped creating music between 1785 and 1790, possibly because his initial published pieces received harsh criticism. For example, a 1784 critique in Johann Nikolaus Forkel's prominent music journal compared Beethoven's compositions to those of amateurs. The three early piano quartets from 1785, Wu 36, which were heavily influenced by Mozart's violin sonatas, show his reliance on the music of that era. Beethoven didn't give his Bonn compositions opus numbers, except for those he revised later in his career, like some of the songs in his Op. 52 collection, 1805, and the Wind Octet that he transformed into a string quintet, Op. 4 in Vienna in 1793. Charles Rosen highlights that Bonn was seen as a less cultured city compared to Vienna, making it unlikely that Beethoven was well-versed in the advanced works of Haydn or Mozart. Rosen suggests that Beethoven's early style was more akin to that of Hummel or Muzio Clementi. Kernan points out that during this period, Beethoven wasn't particularly distinguished by his sonata compositions, but rather by his vocal pieces. His relocation to Vienna in 1792 marked the beginning of his journey towards creating the musical styles for which he is now celebrated. Great job, everyone, for taking the time to watch this video. We're sure it was both educational and captivating. Please remember to leave your comments before the clock runs out. Your input is incredibly valuable to us. If you're just joining us, don't forget to subscribe to our channel by clicking the bell icon to ensure you never miss any of our updates. And if you liked what you saw, please let us know by giving it a thumbs up. It truly aids us in reaching a wider audience like you. Spread the word among your friends and family to help spread awareness and initiate important discussions. Together, we can create a change. Thanks again for your attention. Be on the lookout for more exciting content right here soon.